perilous journey of thousands of miles. Defectors move through Vietnam and Cambodia, often traveling in secret and making barefoot river crossings at night to avoid detection. The psychological pressure is constant. The fear of being caught and returned to an execution squad or a prison camp is often more paralyzing than the physical journey itself. Modern defectors navigate a gauntlet of exploitation, moving through a chain of human rights abuses where the goal is no longer prosperity, but basic survival. This chart tracks the number of North Koreans successfully defecting each year. The peak sits around 2009, but in the 2020s, the numbers dropped to nearly zero. Despite reports of extreme internal crisis, no one is making it out. Historically, defections spiked when the 1990s famine peaked. Most are ordinary citizens escaping poverty, not political dissidents. This brings up a question about the cause of this recent drop. Either internal conditions have improved so much that people no longer need to flee, or the state has successfully engineered a way to keep them inside. The data suggests the latter. This defection rate indicates that the systems keeping the population inside are far more effective than a decade ago. To see how that happened, we have to look at the baseline of how survival used to work. Before the current crackdown, escape usually involved the Tumen River. These agricultural fields and hills mark a border that was historically dangerous, but porous. Success depended on bribing underpaid border guards, who often prioritized their own survival over state orders. Life inside is governed by Sungban, a hereditary social classification. It determines a person's entire life path, from their leadership roles in school to the size of their basic food rations. Good social standing provides no real security. The state can confiscate property or private wealth at any time following a government investigation. When a family faces the sudden loss of everything they own, fleeing becomes their final defense against ruin. Before 2020, defection acted as a critical safety valve. It was the only way out for a population otherwise trapped by their hereditary status. On January 27, 2020, that safety valve was destroyed. The regime used the pandemic as a reason to seal the borders entirely. This closure stopped the flow of food, machinery, and fertilizer that North Korea relies on to feed its people. The seal instantly strangled the local markets. Most North Koreans rely on small side hustles to survive. Now, those markets are filled with empty stalls and soaring prices, where a day's wages can no longer buy a single kilo of rice. Myung-suk used to make a comfortable living smuggling medicine from China. After the border closed, her business collapsed. She now feeds her family corn instead of rice, while neighbors knock on her door begging for food she doesn't have. Some families have returned to eating puljuk, a porridge made of ground plants and grass. This meal is a direct callback to the mass starvation of the 1990s. Even those desperate enough to try a crossing face a new deterrent. Guards are under strict orders to shoot anyone who approaches the border. These accounts reveal an information black hole. Citizens are described as being confined to their towns, unable to move or trade, simply stuck and waiting to die. If a defector miraculously crosses the border, they enter another trap. China refuses to recognize North Koreans as refugees and regularly repatriates them. Once returned, they face documented reports of torture and forced labor. Because escapees must remain hidden, they rely on brokers who often exploit them. Many female defectors are tricked and sold by these brokers into forced marriages or domestic slavery within China. Reaching safety now requires a perilous journey of thousands of miles. Defectors move through Vietnam and Cambodia, often traveling in secret and making barefoot river crossings at night to avoid detection. The psychological pressure is constant. The fear of being caught and returned to an execution squad or a prison camp is often more paralyzing than the physical journey itself. Modern defectors navigate a gauntlet of exploitation, moving through a chain of human rights abuses where the goal is no longer prosperity, but basic survival. The 2020 border closure was a final act of consolidation. It successfully dismantled the survival mechanisms, like market trading and smuggling, that ordinary citizens use to sustain themselves. With diplomats and aid workers gone, the world has lost its eyes on the ground. We are now blind to a famine occurring in real time. Successful defection is now an increasingly rare miracle. This makes the few voices that do emerge essential for understanding what is happening behind the wire. These accounts are more than just stories. They are the only remaining evidence of how the regime has successfully dismantled the survival mechanisms of its own people.